What if I told you the console that rescued Sony's generation was secretly made twice as powerful, and almost nobody knew? To understand how one quiet decision changed everything, we have to go back to a mistake that almost broke them. The PlayStation 3 was a marvel, brutal, brilliant, and unbelievably expensive to build and to program. Its exotic cell processor promised raw power, but it came with a price. Developers spent years wrestling with an architecture that felt more like a puzzle than a platform. Games took longer, budgets exploded, and Sony learned a lesson the hard way. Power isn't useful if no one can use it. So when it came time to design the PS4, Sony hired a different kind of architect, Cerny, a designer who listened to developers and understood that the next console had to be a tool, not a riddle. The brief was simple in words and brutal in implication. Make life easy for creators. Don't build something no studio can use. Build something they can build great things with. At the heart of that promise was a single, terrifying question. How much memory should this machine ship with? Early whispers said 2 gig, then 4. Developers pushed back for was the bare minimum. But there was a third option, far more expensive, that would change the generation. 8 gigabytes. Not just more RAM. 8 gigabytes of high-speed GDDR5, a graphics-grade memory pool with enormous bandwidth. It was the difference between painting on a post-it and painting on a billboard. Leaders in the company asked the obvious question, can we afford this? The truth is brutal. Upgrading to 8 gigabytes would bite into margins. It would inflate the bill of materials. It would be expensive. But someone in that room made a bet. Spend more now, so the platform could perform for a decade. It was a gamble that required courage, and it required trusting developers over accountants. Here's the twist. Many third-party teams were planning their games for a smaller spec. They were told to expect 4 gigabytes. Budgets, art pipelines, memory budgets, everything was being designed around a tighter limit. Then on stage, Cerny said 2 words that rippled to the industry. And it has 8 gigabyte. Imagine that moment. If you're a lead on a AAA, you pack your game into a trench, and suddenly your trench becomes a field. The room went quiet. Then there was stunned, bewildered applause. But it wasn't just the raw number, it was the type. Sony chose GDDR5, the same fast memory used by GPUs, and set up as a single, unified pool accessible to CPU and GPU alike. That meant massive bandwidth, enough to stream giant textures, to swap assets instantly, to build denser worlds without sweating every byte. The rival console took a different route. A lot of slower DDR3 with small, fast cache. The result on paper looked like trade-offs. In real games, it meant friction. On the PS4, you could shove more into RAM and expect it to behave. In practice, the difference showed in texture richness, in how worlds streamed without hiccups, and how quickly teams could prototype and iterate. When you remove a constraint, especially a hard memory cap, development accelerates. Prototypes that would have been tossed become viable. Systems that would have been cut can remain. That freedom doesn't show up in a spec sheet. It shows up in more ambitious games shipped on schedule. Sony launched the PS4 at $399.
Available at $399.
And watched it fly off shelves. 2.1 million units in 2 weeks. Record-breaking momentum that didn't happen by accident. The public saw price and performance. Developers saw a stable, generous spec they could target for years. The quiet decision to give the console breathing room became a pillar of PS4 success. This was not a miracle, it was a choice, a moment when engineers, designers, and executives decided to tolerate short-term pain for long-term gain. They could have played safe. They could have squeezed costs, shipped a leaner machine, and hoped the market forgave them. Instead, they swallowed the cost and gave studios the space to dream bigger. And because the foundation was strong, the PS4 could grow. Sony later introduced refreshes and a Pro model that pushed visual fidelity further. Upgrades that were possible because the original architecture had been generous and future-facing. That single design decision rippled out. Better performance, easier ports, and a library of games that age well. So next time you boot a game and the world feels effortless, remember, some victories are won not on stage but in silent trade-offs. The PS4's hidden upgrade, those 8 gigs of fast, unified memory, wasn't flashy. It was quietly decisive. It let developers stop fighting the machine and start building the worlds we still play in today. If you like this deep dive into the hidden choices that shape our consoles, like and subscribe for more. Tell me which behind-the-scenes decision you want to unpack next, and I'll dig into the quiet moments that made gaming what it is.